start with a little show of hands to have an idea who's in the audience so that I'm not talking to the wrong people or something like that. Who here makes actually devices that are wearable? And that includes clothing. Okay, great. Who makes big data tools that help understand what these devices do? Okay, get a bit of everything. Who makes applications that run on smartphones and stuff like that? Okay, so we got about everybody. Who's into the sports business, the performance business? Like the question is, you work for Nike, Adidas, Puma, or whatever. Okay, great. So we've got about everything, but there's something we all have in common, I think, is that what we start with is what we're trying to figure out is how can we, individuals start everything. And so Tony was talking about the enterprise and what it means, what it doesn't mean. But really it starts with people, especially when it becomes wearable, it becomes very personal. And it sounds to me like the first thing we need to start with is figure out how to build, they told me I have a little remote here, let's see. I made a few slides. How to build what we call the performance dashboard. That's a performance dashboard for a car, but think about a performance dashboard for us humans, for Mrs. and Mr. Everyone. And so what has happened is a lot of people focus on the performance dashboard, but you can't go to a car dealership and buy a dashboard. You can't do that. With wearable tech today, sometimes all you're getting is a dashboard and just go figure it out. Really, the dashboard helps you drive the car. And that means, getting along on the roads, whatever, avoiding tickets, getting tickets, parking, et cetera. That's what the dashboard does. And so when we're talking about a performance dashboard for humans, we're not talking about the dashboard itself, but what the dashboard does. Does it help you sleep better? Does it help you be more productive? Does it help have a better posture? Some people do that. Does it help you do a whole bunch of different things? So you need to think about, what is this for? So I'd like to ask everyone, has everyone slept in this hotel last night? So I slept here. I slept on the 21st floor. And the funniest thing happened, of course, like everybody else, if I do slides, I do them at the last moment, and at 3 a.m., all lights went out. Of course, I didn't know they were doing a test. I had no idea they were doing a test. And of course, lights go out in a hotel, you're at the 21st floor. I started packing my stuff and almost leaving the room through the stairs. When I said, there's no lights here, maybe I'll try to call downstairs. And I would look pretty stupid, but that made for a little bit of disrupted sleep, a little bit. And so part of who I am, what I am today, is how well I slept. So the question is, how did you guys sleep last night? Which is, the question. And so, how do you answer that question? Did you sleep well? And when you say yes, what does that mean? Did you have deep sleep, light sleep? How many times did you wake up, if you woke up? And if you think you slept well, does it mean that you slept well versus yourself or versus people who are similar to you here in the United States or maybe in Japan or maybe in South Africa or something? How do you know how well you slept and what is the meaning of that term? In fact, when you talk to physicians and you're in a consultation, it's normal for a medical practitioner to sit down with you and say, how do you sleep? But it's very subjective, the answer. And so you don't really have a performance dashboard for sleeping. And when you build that performance dashboard, it's really, really important to figure out how you measure this. And so I don't want to get into physics, but if you remember something from your high school days or early university days, something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is what quantum mechanics really are based upon, is that the more you know about something, the less you know about it precisely. And that finally what it means is that the experiment changes the outcome of what you're measuring. And so you're not really measuring what you think you're measuring. And so when people answer the question about sleep, they use apparatus to measure people's sleep. So if you go to a sleep specialist, they'll tell you, okay, you put all this stuff on, and you go sleep in there now. You look at him, I can't fall asleep. And of course, after a few hours, after a night of hardly any sleep, they'll tell you have sleep apnea, or that you need this, you need that, and of course. But did you really measure sleep? It looks like this. So when you measure people's sleep, it's very invasive. That little boy there, when you look at their sleep, what did you actually measure? What did you really measure? Did you measure their sleep, or did you measure, something completely silly? In fact, if you look at this and you look, I live a normal life, I'm going to wear one of these in bed, I will say this. I believe that if you ever wear one of these things in bed, you are in no need of contraception. It happens naturally. Get a double benefit. This is really invasive. And so what do we learn from this? We learn that if we are doing anything to create a performance dashboard, it really has to be non-invasive. Otherwise, what we're measuring is really not what we think you're measuring. And that's true for sleep, but it's true for running. If you have to wear a special kind of clothing, that's not what you would naturally wear, a special kind of shoe, then what you're doing is changing the outcome of the experiment, which is what the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is. So the first thing you think about is us in the wearable industry. If we have to build something, when we build something, it has to be non-invasive. Hence, if I go in the hot tub, whatever if I'm measuring something 24/7, I have to wear it. You see people who say, geez, you can't wear this in the shower, and you're trying to build a wearable tech, say, for senior citizens. Most accidents happen in the shower, and of course, when they're in the shower, that's when they fall, they get hurt, and they're not wearing their wearable tech. And of course, all these systems to alert, control, monitor, and share doesn't work. And those are key words. I should have made a slide for them. I remember it as MAX, monitor, alert, control, and share. Monitor, alert, control, and share. And that's every time we do anything, we're back to monitor, alert, control, and share. That's kind of what happens. When Tony introduced me, he talked about the camera phone. When we did the camera phone, that was 1997. The first commercial version was in Japan at the end of 1999. The vision was point, shoot, and share instantly. It wasn't about as much putting a camera in a phone. It was creating a system that allowed you to point, shoot, and share instantly, which is really what Facebook does, or Twitter, et cetera. is the idea of instantly sharing using this device that's always connected. Well, in the world of wearable, we believe that it's monitor, alert, control, and share. That's really what it is. Monitor, alert, control, and share. So think about sleep. You can monitor sleep, but if you monitor it this way, you're going to change sleep, and you don't want to see. So let's assume you monitor sleep non-invasively. Alert, well, if someone has sleep apnea, you certainly want to be able to alert. Right? Control means you control your own information. It's not your employer or the government. You end up controlling your information. You end up to have ultimate control because, you know, the very intimate part of wearable technology, as you know, is from examining, for example, people's sleep patterns. You can find out if someone's diabetic. You can find out if someone has a chronic condition, et cetera, and that's kind of an invasion of privacy potentially, because as soon as people wear something 24/7, as soon as you use refined data analysis for big data solutions, you actually can learn a lot about people. In fact, by monitoring people's activity and looking at their gait, we can predict when people are going to throw their back out pretty well, because we see people's gait change quite rapidly. So it's quite interesting that all this ties together, and it all boils down to monitor, alert, control, and share. So control, the control of that an individual has over their information is key, because that happens before you share. And it's true when you share your pictures, by the way, when you don't want to share your kids' pictures with every person on the internet. You're pretty careful with that. And if you think about it, it's all about monitor, alert, control, and share. So non-invasiveness, in order to have a dashboard that actually reflects what it is that you actually do, is very critical. So we get back to that dashboard, really. And when you have a dashboard and you have information, the question is, how good is this information? And for information to be good, usually it has to be accurate. It has to represent what you think it does, accurate and reliable. So how does one think about accurate and reliable? And does accuracy matter? Does it matter if I tell someone that they actually slept 6 hours and 22 minutes versus 6 hours and 32 minutes? And does it matter that I display on someone's sleep dashboard that they woke up 2 times instead of 3 times, and they slept 3 to 4 deep light sleep cycles? Does it matter? Of course it matters. And in fact, as you start looking at all these solutions, you find out that it's very important. For example, let's assume that I can improve my sleep 10% and through my lifetime by doing that. And that means, for example, if I assume I sleep a third of my life, that I would maybe increase my life expectancy 3.3%. Well, 3.3% life expectancy increase just by understanding your sleep and improving your sleep is great progress. In fact, statistics show that if you cure cancer, you basically improve the life expectation of the average human by about 3 to 5 years, max. And that means curing cancer. Here it's just sleeping a little more. So accuracy really matters, and you don't want to wait till the end of your life to say, oh geez, if I had known, I could have done all that. And of course, that's really important. So how much does accuracy matter? Well, in the case of this lady here, it does. I'm not sure if he wants to keep on working with his partner, it matters to him too, but it really matters to her. So he's like the doctor and you're like the patient. And so, how active do you want to be? And if the measure of the accuracy, how active you are as a user of wearable technology is within 20%, and all you need to avoid a chronic disease like high blood pressure or diabetes type 2 or something like that is to increase your level of activity 10%. You can't really accurately get there. And so it's really important to understand what this all means, and accuracy truly matters. You can't come up with your own units of measurement. You're active. You should be more active. When it's meaningless and when you find out that what you're displaying has nothing to do really with calories or reality, or say, you're vigorously active or something like that. For example, if you wear a shoe pod, you can actually tap your foot while you're eating Doritos and watching television and run a marathon. Did you run a marathon, really? No, you didn't. So the bottom line is that it's not about tricking the system. It's about realistic, accurately, honestly looking at what these numbers do. And it always boils back down to monitor, alert, control, and share. It's a very clear thing. So why do you need really to make these devices useful? In the first pass, they need to become invisible and to become accurate. Then you feel that in the concept of monitor, alert, control, share, in that process, you can have something useful because they're invisible, meaning that they're non-invasive. So now you can actually take the information that comes out of these devices and do something useful with them. And that's very key. If they're accurate, you can trust that information. Now, of course, it comes out at how do you interpret that information? What does that information mean? And that's where big data comes in. Big data comes in a real important way. Let's assume, so I'll give you an example. We actually build a sleep technology in a lot of devices, and we have millions of nights of sleep of people around the world. So I can take, something like, let's take a 45-year-old premenopausal woman in the United States, and I can say, on the average, you will wake up 2 or 3.2 times a night, and you'll get about 5 cycles at most of sleep. You'll have pretty disrupted sleep. So if you're one of those people, should you be worried? Probably not. Because that's, that you're like your average 45-year-old premenopausal female. If you only wake up on the average 1.5 times a night, then you're actually doing really well. And so you shouldn't worry about that. And then you start seeing, so what does big data mean? Because, people say you should sleep 8 hours a night, uninterrupted sleep. And then you realize that when you look at millions of nights of sleep of humans, that really doesn't happen. It's like very few people sleep that way. But you can't understand that until you have information about all these people that is accurate and that actually you can look at with big data analytics, and then you can draw some conclusion and then help people understand where they are and what they are doing. And it's really a very key piece. This is true for activity, It's amazing to watch in different cultures how people are active and how long in our society people are sitting and how little they're standing up. And sitting is probably the most harmful thing you can do in your day, just sitting all day long in front of a computer or television or anything, it's probably the best way to screw yourself up for later. And it's pretty an interesting piece of information to look at different cultures and see how people live in a different way. So you can only understand that once you have big data analytics that you can apply to devices that are invisible, accurate, and report in great numbers, so that you actually have great numbers. So when you look at these, you start looking at extremely useful information. In fact, you start being able to predict what's going to happen to people. You can see, that if people have this kind of lifestyle, move only, like for example, the myth of you sit all day and you go work out at the gym for 45 minutes, and you find out that these people are headed for the wall, because in reality, it'd be much better off, getting up 10 minutes every hour and walking around the block than they are by just sitting all day and just thinking that they're leading a healthy life because they go work out once a day. And you find out that the human body from an evolutionary standpoint is not designed to do that. And that's part of the things that you find out by looking at these and all of this. And this is how personally I got into Wearable, is in the early 2000s. I was very interested in sleep and understanding, what did people really understand about sleep? And my dad got put on a sleep apnea machine, one of those Elephant Man machines. And I said, that's unbelievable. How can he sleep like that? I couldn't. And how do they know that he needs this? And is there another way to look at it? And that's how I started to understand that how you measure things impacts what you're measuring. And if what you're measuring is not what you think you're measuring, you can actually do more harm than good. And that the goal was to create technology that was invisible and accurate. And basically, you want to create devices that are such that you wear them and you forget them. And that's really important. You want to wear them and forget them. And they have to be miniature, long battery life, because everybody hates to charge things. So if you build a watch and it lasts 18 hours, people will use it for 3 days, give you a good review, maybe on TechCrunch or something like that, and then people will stop using it because a watch has to last at least a year. When we have watches, et cetera. I mean, this is not something, oh, geez, I can't get the time because I forgot to charge it. It doesn't work that way. At least, 10 days, 30 days or something like that. Long battery life is good. And that makes this technology difficult, by the way, because if it has to be miniature, it has to be long battery life, and it has to be small, and it has to be meaningful, invisible, extremely useful, repeatable, reliable. And if all this has to happen, then these devices have to be really small, non-invasive, and have to really make a difference. It can't be something like this guy's wearing. In fact, if you look at, for example, the Google Glass, is there anybody here who has a pair of Google glasses? Oh, great. So have you noticed how when you show up anywhere, you look at someone, people say, oh, what is this? It's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. The fact that you're wearing this changes your interaction with people. People think that they can see under your clothes, or you can see who you are, they can see your soul, or you can, you see? That's exactly the point. This lady can see under your clothes. You need to know that once you do that. I'm really sorry if you're looking at me. I'm forgiven, that's good. The point is, it has to be invisible. It's really, really, really clear. Meaningful, invisible, extremely useful, etc. In order to become mainstream, because, of course, when we are ready to use a tool when it's useful and when it's meaningful. But we're all living lives, and we want to look like ourselves and not like cyborgs, etc. And that was the problem, by the way, with Bluetooth headsets. The first wearable device that people used to carry everywhere was a Bluetooth headset. And it still is in some way. But if you look at who's now wearing a Bluetooth headset, that market has basically shrunk. And people say it has shrunk because every smartphone comes with a connected headset. Yes, yeah, maybe. But it has shrunk because you kind of look funny with something stuck to your ear. And that's the bottom line. And some people are fine with it. And you see, a lot of people in airports, especially in Asia, who wear them because they can walk around. But when they get home, they take them off. And so the concept of wearable is that it's something that, you could argue that something that's invisible you can wear. And maybe the example that I used before, which is, it can't be part of your Planned Parenthood contraceptive life. And, it has to be part of your social life and your natural life and what you usually do. So it's really important to see that if us as an industry want to actually create those billions of opportunities, there are barriers, and there are technology barriers. And then Tony and I talked about all this, and Tony was talking about the idea of Sidekick in the early days of the personal computer. The idea was to have something there all the time that you can call on and that could help you. And wearable technology has to be there all the time. You have to be able to access it, but not have it get in the way. And that's difficult technology. It's not web programs, it's not smartphone apps. It's actually difficult embedded technology because it has to have long battery life. You end up running on very small processors. You end up running on sensors that use very little power. And of course, in order to be more accurate and provide more information, you want to do sensor fusion because, of course, activity tracking using an accelerometer is very useful and you can do a lot of things with it. But the next thing you want is to monitor more things like temperature, altitude, whether you're going up or down. You want to monitor pulse. You could use spectrography to actually monitor non-invasively what happens with your bloodstream so that you can figure out whether you had too many lipids, too much protein, or too many carbs at breakfast, and be able to correct accordingly. You can monitor people's oxygen saturation in the blood. There's a lot of things you can do. But you have to do them invasively if you want that stuff to be there all the time. And most of us in our lives have family and friends who have had a chronic condition. And that's when we come across monitoring those body signs. So we have an uncle or a parent, a dad or some mother who has a heart condition, and suddenly we see them put something on their finger and looking at oxygen saturation. And with great expectation, we go to this hospital and say, let me try me. And the person who's hospitalized maybe has 91, 92% oxygen saturation. Then you try and you go, 98%. You go, oof, I'm fine. You're fine until you're not. And you don't really know it because there is no non-invasive, continuous way to do that. And of course, that applies to a lot of signs you want to monitor. One being, for example, the elusive, non-invasive monitoring of blood glucose in the blood, which is a major issue with people, tens and tens of millions of people being pre-diabetics and not knowing it. And of course, if you can catch, pre-diabetes, before diabetes, you can help people a lot because it becomes something that is completely reversible. Once the diabetes switch has flipped, it's much more difficult. And although there are anecdotal cases of people turning that around, it's much less likely. So as people growing up in this world, and having children and parents, we all come across these chronic conditions, and we don't have any non-invasive, continuous way to figure them out. And that's really the broad range of things we can do in the world of Wearable, from personal performance to monitoring difficult chronic diseases and helping people live a longer life. And so that leads me a little bit to the first generation of devices are devices like we're all familiar with, and bands or apps that monitor what you do 24/7 that you can find on the App Store if you don't want to wear a device, etc. But then when you start looking at meaning and quantification, you're going to try to use one of those. Meaning, how well did you sleep, and how can you quantify that, which is really what it's about. And to get back to our initial example. But it all goes back to that performance dashboard. And from that performance dashboard, you want to be able to monitor, alert, control, and share from that performance dashboard. So let's think about what it means for us as an industry, because as we saw in our initial show of hands, we are pretty representative of a very broad audience here. And although I'm sure some people are competing with others and all that, the pie is going to be so big that there's going to be room for everyone. The key is to make sure the pie is big. And so if all we build is dashboards, I'm not sure the car is going to get on the road. We need to build the car. Yes, a dashboard is critical, because without a dashboard, you can't drive the car. But we still need to have 4 wheels. We still need to have a motor. We need to have navigation systems, etc. And so how do we, as in the world of wearable technology, how do we get to a point where we are really helpful to people? If we're helpful to people, we'll be helpful to corporations. We'll be able to do a lot of stuff. So how do we do this? So take sleep. Most people think they should sleep. Does anybody here, let me ask a question. Anybody think they sleep too much? Does anybody they sleep not enough? It's our society, right? But what does that mean? We want to. So you know it. You know you want to sleep more. I know it. So what's the problem? I'm a pretty strong-willed person. I have pretty much a good idea. Let me ask you another question. Who in this room wants to put on body fat? Who in this room wants to lose body fat? You're all very smart. We're all very smart. But we know what to eat and not to eat. What's wrong with us? We want to sleep more. We want to lose body fat. We know that. So let me ask you another question. Who thinks they exercise too much? Who think they don't exercise enough? Most people. Do you know that statistically, if every human would be able to do 5 push-ups, 1 pull-up, and 5 squats once a day, the average lifespan of that human would go up 5 years? Do you know that if you cured cancer, the average lifespan of a human would go up 3 years. It's a pretty staggering statistic. So obviously what's missing here? Everybody is, you're here, you woke up really early to hear someone blabbing like me, rambling. I mean, you're pretty strong willpower. You know what you want. You probably have a business or a job and you want to be a leader in Wearable. Yeah, the people in this room are probably leaders that know what they're doing. They run their lives. They run their careers. What's wrong? And so I contend that we need to build tools that help people do something that I call will to will. Because we know what we want. What we're lacking is the will to will. Because we have the will, but we don't have the will to will, and we lose it. So basically, to make this all helpful to most people, what we need to do is help people have the will to will. It's not about willpower, as we just saw from a show of hands. It's about the will to will. And it's true in everything we do in our lives, whether it's our relationships. We all want to improve our relationships in general. No, I haven't met someone who says, yes, I want a worse relationship with my kids or my life partner or my parent. Everybody wants a better relationship. But sometimes they get worse. The same thing with sleep, the same thing with food, the same thing with exercise. We are lacking the will to will what's important. And so when we build tools, those monitor, alert, control, and share tools, we must focus on making it so that it helps people get the will to will. And that's difficult. And that's the higher end of what we're trying to do, and how we turn this into an industry where billions and billions of people are helped. Because suddenly we're not just giving them a dashboard, maybe very accurate, very useful, but really we're helping them get the tools to will to will. So that's the end of my prepared remarks, and I'd be happy, Tony, do we have time for Q&A? So if you have questions, I'm happy to do a dialogue rather than keep on making a speech, because we talked about a lot of things, and I'm sure that you guys have lots of input on a lot of these subjects. So, yes? Well, so sleep is important. What else but sleep? Sleep is very important. Activity is important. Blood pressure is important. Heart rate monitoring is important. Blood glucose is important. Name it. Catching a driver when it's about to fall asleep at the wheel, and monitor, alert, control, share in that case, and somehow avoiding that driver from dozing off and running into a car coming in a head-on collision. There are infinite amounts of possibilities, really, truly, because wearable is something that we really haven't, it's really helped us will to will. No one wants to fall asleep at the wheel. But I don't really get tools that help me not fall asleep, except the 5-hour energy stuff, which will eventually kill me, but in a different way. But that's about the only tool you have to not fall asleep. And we already use too much caffeine in the society. So we need to get some other tool. So that's the point. There's a lot. There's a lady here who does tools that help people improve their posture. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different there are a lot of different possibilities in what we can do. There, clearly, but I think our imagination is the limit. And of course, if you ask me what we're working on, I can tell you what we're working on today, but because I'm in this business too, we're working on the next 5 years, and of course, it's a bit of a secret. And in fact, I'd argue that most of the IP for what we have today, all the patents and et cetera, happened probably 7 years ago. I know most of the patents and the IP that we filed in this space happened 5, 7 years ago. When people are talking about it, that stuff's already done. So you have to be ahead because it takes a while and all that stuff. So if, it's pretty much, it's always like that. I use the example of first camera phone. We got, I think, our first patents in 1997, 99 when we did that. The first camera phone shipped in Japan really in the beginning of 1999 with Sharp and J-Phone. And in the US in 2002. By the time a camera phone was shipping in the US, the patents that are the patents that Apple, Samsung, and Google and all the others are fighting about, especially now that Google owns Motorola, were already filed. They're actually fighting on smartphones over patents that have to do with cameras, calendars, and all that were filed at that time. You can learn from that, know that in Wearable, most of the IP already exists in terms of patents and all that. So it's kind of an interesting thing. We're late. If you're coming into this business and trying to create technology and protect it with patents, it's going to be difficult because a lot of people have been working on it early on, and that's what early people get. Yes?
I continue to be troubled by this notion of, I understand non-invasive and visible sensing and processing, but how do people change behavior if they have to look at the data the next day, or, so the time to react to something, I think if we're advocating the industrial design part of it, or the attractive design part of it, and letting our cell phones, our smartphones make the decisions for us, how do we change behavior? Complicated, right?
So how are we going to change people's behavior, and how do we do it in a non-invasive way? Because every time you have to understand what someone's doing or something like that, if you have to look, okay, well, let me look at my smartphone or something like that to see what I'm doing, it's in some ways changing the outcome of the experiment. And how do we create that motivation? And I think that's really the challenge. That's why, so monitor, that you do a non-invasive, alert. So you're talking about, there's certain things that are urgent and important, and you want to alert people, like, you've been sitting too long, little buzz, oh, geez, I got to get up. That's a very simple way to, in a non-invasive way, if people choose to. Yes?
There's a notion called calm technology, and if you're getting a shock or a buzz all the time if you're not sitting up properly, I think that's a little disruptive. But there's a notion in design that's calm technology, meaning that no one knows really what the signal is except you. You're not required to interact with it in any way, but it's very, very stable, and it doesn't disrupt your normal course of action if you choose not to. So I think that's an intriguing idea, because we don't all want to be buzzed all day and have sounds bursting in our eardrums. So just a thought. Too much caffeine.
So, calm technology. But it turns out that I can tell from how you express yourself and your body language that it works for you. Because it turns out that there are many different personalities in humans. In fact, if you take some of the people who study personalities, let's say the main person who did that, Carl Jung said, there's 16 main personality types. And people can be, he has this whole matrix. Different solutions work for different people. Calm technology works for about a fourth of that matrix, maybe more. Doesn't work for me. It's because, I'm a very active doer, make it happen person, and I need something to actually remind me that I'm there. And if it's, it could be my partner, it could be a device that goes, okay, I've been sitting too long. But I need that. I can't, I'm not a contemplative type. And so there are, as you well know, there are different personalities. So I think there may not be one solution that fits everyone. And that's the problem with industrial design in general, is that industrial designers are usually extremely creative, really good people who tend to design for themselves with an idea for themselves. And they're geniuses like Jonathan Ives at Apple, the people at IDEO, at Frog Design, and others who've done some great designs. But they tend to design for themselves or have a group of people who design for more people. And some people, make a fairly broad design, but others don't. And, you have this whole idea. Some people love Macintoshes, I do, and some people love Windows. And they have a choice, they'll pick one or the other. And they're really a different gestalt, different thing. And it has to be, in many ways, to do with personality types. So I don't think there's personally one design that fits everyone. And that's a good thing, because that means that there are a lot of different opportunities, and you don't have to be right 100%. But I totally agree with you that, for certain category of people, absolutely, the concept of being non-intrusive. But if something is non-intrusive for personality like mine, I'm not going to do much about it. I really need something that says, hey, watch out. Oh, okay, yeah, right. I need that little voice over my shoulder because I'm a, triple alpha personality charging type, and, that's who I am. But somebody else who's much more balanced than I am will do very well with a system like that. So that would be my answer, just a bit different designs for different people. Other questions? We're at the end of our time. Oh, yes?
You talked about small and invisible. Can you tell us what can you take in the shower or in the hot tub?
What can we take in the shower and the hot tub? Well, I can take my body in the shower and the hot tub in general, but not always. I'll give you an example. It's very interesting because people pay more attention to the devices they wear and which ones they take in the hot tub, like a Nike Fuel Band or something like that, and which is fine. People do that, but they don't pay attention to their own body. I'll give you an example. The typical pH, level of acidity, if you want to call it like that, of someone's skin is about 7.2 or something like that. The typical tap water at about room temperature, pH is about 6.8. The typical pH in a hot tub in a hotel like this, I measured it, is 7.6. So why is that? Well, why do pools in hotels have a 7.6 pH level? It's because it costs less to maintain. Because if you go down to 7.2 or 7.3, you'll have to change your pumps, your filters, your pipes almost once a year. Is that good for you to be swimming in 7.8? It isn't good. Most people don't notice. Some people get rashes. People are more concerned about their wearable device being able to go in the hot tub than they are of their own skin, which is pretty wearable until it doesn't, and you get skin cancer and all these things. My point is that, and that's how I'm answering your question, is that we are at the beginning of understanding the relationship between wearable technology and our own body. And these wearable devices need to be, I don't have this up anymore, invisible, and have to be 24/7 so that you actually are able to keep them in the hot tub. And at the same time, be able to say, hey, this thing is telling me that this water is 7.8 pH or whatever. I shouldn't be in there. But right now, we're more worried about the device failing because I spent $99 or something I get, and it leaked inside and the device failed because I put it in hot water. But the reality is that this device ultimately needs to help us live a better life, which means I want to save my skin before I want to save my device. So it's almost like I don't want to go anywhere where I can't wear my device because I know that I'm compromising my skin. And so there isn't big studies yet done with pool water and what happens to people who immerse themselves in pool water for a long time. But your skin is your ultimate wearable device. Take care of it. That would be my answer.